All right, boys and girls, Troy here from Quad Standard Labs. We have in front of us the DAC Universal Mount. Basically, we're going to do a quick unpackage and talk about what's in the package, how to use everything, and how to get everything set up. This mount does have a few options and some things that when you get it, depending on how you receive it, you may receive it already on the plate. Sometimes they're going to come like that, depending on the clients we're sending them to. We may send them already set up for you as if we pretty much already know what you're going to be using it for. For some folks that aren't clients, they may receive this and it may come basically just as you see. So we're going to start with you should get a carbon plate, at least if you ordered one. It'll have either Rivnuts like this one has in it, or you'll have Rivnuts in your packaging. You also, going forward with new packages, will have spare Rivnuts. And this is actually a system that may change soon. We actually have an improvement to using individual Rivnut positions to something that's going to be a little more custom. However, that's going to be in future revisions. It'll be usable on any mount. You just would have to change the carbon plate. That's not what this video is about, though. This is about the unboxing. So, current version that I have in hand, Rivnuts installed. Again, you have 4 Rivnuts for the mount. There are extra positions in certain plates for more Rivnuts, so you will have spacer or spare ones in the package for hardware. And before we get into unboxing, I just want to talk about how you can install Rivnuts. There's 2 or 3 different ways. The old smash and grab, take the Rivnut, position it, and try to hammer it into place on a nice solid surface. It doesn't work very well. But if you really strike it properly and you really, line things up, it could. And that's one method. I don't recommend it, but it's a method. Channel locks and or a vice grip of some sort where you get the Rivnut again positioned. You then take your vice grips, tighten down, and you use those to squeeze and really vice those things in there. If you're going to use some sort of plier like these channel locks or some other type, then you want to probably put some tape around some electrical tape around the kind of bite teeth here. Otherwise, you may kind of damage the carbon a little bit and or the Rivnut. Don't want to do that. So if you are going to compress with metal, something like pliers or some sort, definitely set those up ready. The last one, and for those that don't have an arbor press, by the way, because if you have an arbor press, hey, you're set up. You already know how to do this. But if you don't have an arbor press, but you do have some sort of kind of nice metal vise, I would try to use that. That's how we install them on some. And for that, again, you're going to kind of get them lined up. You're going to hold them in position. Here you can see have some tape on the vise itself to again protect it, and then you just clamp it in and just really tighten down. And this would also work if you had some sort of C-clamp or something like that that you could use in a similar fashion. So that's how you're going to install any Rivnuts. If you want to add the additional Rivnuts for the extra movement, or if for some reason we shipped yours and it didn't have the Rivnuts, again, we're going to try to be pre-installing these, and down the road, this may not even be an issue. But that's your plate. Once you have your Rivnuts installed, you can go ahead and open up the mount itself first. We're going to get it ready to install onto the plate. And there's really nothing to do here except for we're going to loosen this screw on each side, which is your adjuster screw. While we have this here, I want to talk about real quick this nut on the current version, which has a Delrin machined linkage. It is epoxied to this Delrin, this nut. So if as long as you're tightening and loosening this and just not putting a ton of force on it, which you shouldn't be having to over tighten it anyways, this should not come loose. If this nut is to at some point come loose, which we've had one customer say that theirs started to come off when they were tightening it, it more than likely is because once it's tight, you're tightening it too much. You just need this washer to get just friction tight, and you don't need any more tightness. So if it does come loose, take some epoxy, put it around the edge of the nut. Try not to get it in there. I would suggest having the screw in it. But again, just make sure you don't get any on that screw thread. Just get it on the edge of the nut and on the Delrin linkage, and that'll retain it after it dries. Again, as long as you're not going too ham on it, it should be fine. But we're actually going to go ahead and remove both sets of screws. And we're going to do that so we can access the rear mounting screws. So when we lift this linkage up and get it out of the way, we can find the access to the rear mounting screw here. Otherwise, when it's closed, you can't get to that screw. It's being low profile and as compact as possible, there's just no way to get to that. So what we're going to do here is now we're going to go ahead and get to our hardware package. So we're going to set these two screws aside. Don't lose those or the washers. In your hardware package, you'll actually have a little piece of paper from DAC that has your everything that was packed in it. If you ordered dampeners, you'll find your dampeners. And in here, you're also possibly, this is something that is being done by hand by me right now. We are trying to include little pieces of rubber battery pad that we've hand cut into the links that you can actually put on the camera mount to give you a little bit of dampening between the camera and the mount, but more so that kind of non-slip kind of setup. So that's really what it's about. It also kind of takes up a little bit of the extra space if your 10/32, or I'm sorry, quarter 20 screw doesn't actually go through without tightening the camera. If you need to put washers or something, this could take the place of having to use washers on those quarter 20s, which, by the way, you're going to need your own quarter 20s for this. We can't include quarter 20s for everybody that fits every camera and every length that everybody needs. So that's going to be something that you're going to want to get yourself. We will at some point try to source some and try to maybe have those as an option. Inside your hardware kit, you're going to find your dampener toppers, and two of them are going to have a nut and a screw attached already. And not sure why, but those are just going to be like that. We're going to then have all of our other screws here, and then I'm sorry, these two nuts, I know why, I apologize. These two nuts are just there to show you that you need the two front nuts in the front mount. And this goes for Sicario in the front, or if you have a thick plate, the side ones. So that's why they're there. The nuts are there. I'm just saying they're installed on the screws. It's just fun that James does that. I think it's a really great little touch. The things that we're looking for are these 4 M4 screws. So M4 screws over here. We also will have in there a brace. This metal pin can be inserted at your leisure if you feel like you need it. We don't really feel like it's needed, and in fact, in future models, it's probably going to disappear. But this pin can be pushed in, and you're going to need to use a vise or some sort of, again, tool. But you can put this pin in between the linkage, just like this, and it gives you a little more support. Again, totally unnecessary unless for some reason you just really feel like you're getting something that you need it for. It actually does get in the way of the quarter 20 screws if you have a nice big kind of quarter 20 head. So especially at certain positions. So again, it's left out specifically just in case you want to add it. It's part of our hardware kits now. It may disappear in the future because, again, not needed. But if you do have a use case where you needed it, let us know so we can note it. So in order to put this on the plate, on a Sicario plate, which is what we're working with, this is the front, this is the rear. If I want to put it on in a traditional method, we're going to go ahead and put it on just like this. That'll be standard tilt, forward and backward, just all the way to 0 and all the way up to 50 degrees. If I wanted negative tilt, we could reverse this around. And now we've got from negative 50 all the way down to 0. So depending on how you're trying to run it, most people are going to run it the standard traditional way. We're going to drop these M4 screws in all 4 positions. And we are going to use an M3 driver. I'm sorry, an M2.5 driver to tighten these in. Now this brings me to the 4th way that I, again, don't really recommend putting Rivnuts in, but if you absolutely have to put Rivnuts in and you don't have any other way, one of the ways to do it is to use the screws themselves. So you would tighten the Rivnuts, get them mounted and in there where they need to go, and then just try to tighten the screws down as tight as you can, and that sometimes will get you nicely seated. I again, don't really prefer that methodology because it's really easy to strip a screw head out, especially if you aren't using a proper tool or just really just not the best way to really force one in, but it would work. So I've now got the mount mounted on the plate. All the screws I can see are flush and nice in the bottom. We're going to go ahead and put this linkage back down. So we're going to lower the linkage. And now that the linkage is lowered back into position, we can go ahead and take those screws. And with that same M2.5 driver that we were using, we can go ahead and get those into the linkage. Remember, we're also not tightening these super, crazy tight. We're just going to tight, just to hand tight right where it stops. While you're doing this, you're going to notice one of the great features about this mount, which is it's got the laser etched or machine etched, degrees of tilt right there on the edge of each side. So it's easily visible on both sides. Now I have it nice and tight. Look, you can see I'm pushing down on it as hard as I really can, and I'm not able to get it to move. So again, you don't need to go too crazy tight. Loosen it just a quarter turn, and now we can go flat. All the way flat to 0, all the way up to 50. When you do get it all the way to 50, you are going to need to kind of use your hands to kind of move the legs forward just because of how that leverage point really is. It does take a little bit to kind of get it started to start being able to move these legs back forward. So just use your hands, get it to about 55 degrees or so, almost 40, 45, I mean. Oh, it's tightened up. There we go. And once it's there, you can just use your hands to nicely adjust it. All right, so that's going to be how to install the mount onto the plate. Lastly, your dampeners. If you already have a mount, which you should have probably, you're going to have a lower and an upper dampener. The lower is the thicker. It's going to go below. You're going to then put the top on it, which is the thinner one. And then we're going to take these screws. We're going to put them through these plastic headers, and they're going to get screwed into place. Again, the two with the nuts, if you have a Sicario, it's going to go in the front here. If you have a thick, it's going to go on the sides. And that's where we're going to go all the way around. Get it mounted, and then you're ready to go fly. That's your DAC Universal Mount introduction. We appreciate you using the product. James Neer, the designer, is pretty awesome. And if you have any feedback for any future revisions, please let us know. Fly safe, fly smart, just fly. Peace.